My name is Daniel Price. I'm 39 years old, and for most of my adult life I believed I had everything under control. I lived in a quiet district on the outskirts of Portland, in a neighborhood where the evenings smelled like pine and the nights felt safely predictable. I had a stable career in data analysis, a modest but comfortable house, and until recently, I thought I had love, real love, the kind that steadies a man who long ago forgot how to trust anything fully. Her name was Amelia Hart. We met in the most ordinary way, a coffee shop line. Two people reaching for the same packet of sugar. An awkward apology followed by an unexpected conversation that lasted nearly an hour. Back then I wasn't looking for anything. Yet there she was, vibrant, confident, with eyes that seemed to hold too many stories at once. I didn't realize how dangerous that kind of beauty could be. We grew close quickly. Within months she moved into my house, and for the first time in years I allowed myself to imagine a future that looked like something more than just work and routine. She made my life feel lighter. That's what still angers me the most. How real it all felt. How carefully she crafted the illusion. Everything changed the day I noticed a pattern in her schedule that didn't make sense. Amelia had started coming home later than usual, claiming extra meetings, exhausting days, sudden deadlines. But she always seemed strangely energized instead of tired. A part of me brushed it off. People change. Work gets chaotic. Stress affects everyone differently. But another part of me, one I'd ignored for years, whispered that something was wrong. It wasn't a single moment that confirmed my suspicion, but a collection of small inconsistencies, each insignificant on its own. A faint smell of cologne on her jacket, not mine. Her phone flipped face down more often than usual. A hollow kind of smile when she thought I wasn't watching. These things accumulate, like dust in the corners of a house you stop paying attention to. Eventually, I did what I had promised myself long ago I'd never do. I went through her messages. I still remember the exact moment. The house was silent. Amelia was in the shower, and her phone buzzed on the nightstand. A name flashed on the screen: Ethan Hale. I knew him. He worked with her. I'd met him at a company event, tall, overconfident, one of those men who treated every room like it owed him something. The message wasn't explicit, but it didn't need to be. Same time tomorrow. Yesterday was unforgettable. My hands froze. My stomach dropped. The kind of cold that hits you from inside out, not dramatic, not cinematic, just brutally real. I didn't confront her. Not immediately. That kind of truth demands patience, planning, and clarity. I needed to understand how deep the betrayal ran before I opened my mouth. Over the next week I observed everything. Amelia's tone when she spoke to him on the phone, her sudden excuses to leave the house, the way she smiled at messages she didn't share with me. I saw it all, quietly, methodically, collecting every detail. You don't spend years analyzing data without learning how to connect patterns, even when they hurt. One evening, when she told me she'd be working late, I followed her. Not closely, just enough to stay unseen. She drove to a hotel near the river, the kind of place used by people who desperately want to remain unnoticed. I watched her step out of the car. I watched Ethan open the side entrance for her. I watched the door shut behind them. There are moments that redefine you. This was mine. But instead of rage, I felt an unexpected and dangerous calm. It wasn't numbness. It was clarity. Pure, almost clinical. I realized I wasn't going to confront her. Not yet, not loudly, not with tears or shouting. I wasn't going to give her the satisfaction of seeing me break up. No, I was going to dismantle everything they had built behind my back piece by piece. The same way they had dismantled my trust, quietly, patiently, with precision. Revenge doesn't have to be violent to be devastating. Sometimes the most powerful consequences are the ones delivered without raising your voice, without touching a single person, just exposing the truth they tried to hide. And I was very, very good at finding the truth before anything else. I needed access. to her accounts, her schedules, her hidden messages. Luckily, Amelia was predictable in the way people become when they think they're smarter than those around them. She reused passwords. She saved things she shouldn't. She underestimated me, which turned out to be her biggest mistake. Within 48 hours, I knew their meeting times, their hotel bookings, their office dynamics, and every detail of their conversations. I read things that made my vision blur with anger, but I forced myself to stay controlled. If I reacted emotionally, I'd fail. My goal wasn't just to catch them, it was to ensure that the fallout would leave permanent marks on both their lives. The first step was gathering evidence. The second step was isolating them from every piece of support they relied on. The third step required patience. By the end of the week, I had built a complete map of their betrayal, dates, messages, photos, receipts, call logs, everything. And then an unexpected twist revealed itself, something that made the situation far more complex than simple infidelity, something that hinted that Ethan wasn't just a colleague, and Amelia wasn't just sneaking around. There was something else between them, something professional, secretive, and risky enough to destroy more than just their relationship. That discovery changed everything. Before I could begin the final phase of my plan, I had to understand exactly what they had gotten themselves into, and whether their betrayal of me was only the surface of a much deeper lie. I didn't sleep the night I discovered the deeper layer of their connection. Instead, I sat in my dimly lit office, surrounded by open tabs, decrypted files, and message threads that didn't make sense at first. Infidelity is one thing, painfully human, disappointingly common. But what I saw between Amelia and Ethan went far beyond stolen evenings and hotel rooms. There were documents, encrypted exchanges, financial transfers that didn't belong to either of them, and references to something they simply called the project. That word showed up too many times to be meaningless. At first, I assumed it was work-related, a presentation, maybe some confidential assignment they were using as an excuse to meet outside the office. But then I found a message from Ethan that changed the trajectory of everything. We need to be careful. If this gets out, it's both our careers, maybe worse. Don't slip up like last time. That phrase spiraled through my head. It told me their secret wasn't new. It wasn't a moment of weakness. It wasn't impulsive. It was deliberate, rehearsed, ongoing. A betrayal with structure. I dug deeper. The messages were oddly fragmented, as if they were intentionally avoiding clear descriptions. But people get comfortable. People get sloppy. And Amelia, for all her confidence, wasn't half as discreet as she thought. A deleted folder, one she forgot to unlink from her cloud backup, contained PDFs of internal reports, signatures from executives, and budget approvals that shouldn't have existed. It took me a few hours to piece them together, but eventually I understood. They weren't just having an affair. They were using it. The project they kept referring to involved misreported data, manipulated analytics, and money funneled to a contractor I couldn't fully identify. Amelia's job in public relations didn't give her direct access to those documents, but Ethan's position in corporate strategy did. And the timestamps matched perfectly with their hotel meetings. They were coordinating something that required privacy, something worth risking everything for. I leaned back in my chair, staring at the screen until my eyes blurred. My first thought wasn't anger, it was calculation. If they were involved in a fraudulent scheme, then exposing their affair alone wouldn't just ruin their relationship. It would ruin their careers, reputations, and potentially drag them into legal consequences. But I wasn't ready to strike yet, not without understanding the full scope. For the next days, I lived like a ghost in my own home. Amelia thought she was fooling me with her cheerful greetings and casual excuses about late presentations. She had no idea that every time she left the house, my system notified me of her location. No idea I was monitoring her email in real time. No idea the man she believed she was deceiving sat only a room away. quietly pulling apart every piece of her double life. On the third day, the opportunity I needed fell into my hands. They planned another meeting, not at the hotel this time, but at an underground parking lot beneath Ethan's apartment complex. A strange location for two people who claimed to be working late. My instincts told me this meeting wasn't romantic. It was business. Risky business. I went early. The lot was dim, nearly empty, the kind of place where every sound echoed twice. I parked behind a concrete pillar, hidden but with a perfect view of the elevator. My heartbeat was unusually calm, my hands steady. It surprised me. I expected anger, anxiety, something explosive. Instead, I felt like a man watching a chessboard moments before his opponent realized they'd already lost. At exactly 8:42 p.m., Amelia's car pulled in. She stepped out quickly, looking around more than usual. Nervous and settled, she held a folder pressed tightly to her chest. A minute later, Ethan arrived, checking his phone obsessively as he walked toward her. I recorded everything. They talked quietly, their voices muffled by distance and echo. But their body language said enough. No laughter, no flirting, no affectionate touches. This wasn't an affair meetup. It was an exchange. Amelia handed him the folder. Ethan flipped through the pages, nodding sharply. His brows were upon with tension. Then he pulled out a USB drive from his pocket and gave it to her. Her hands trembled when she took it. That tremble told me more than any confession ever could. They weren't partners in the scheme. Amelia was scared. Ethan wasn't. Before I could analyze what I'd learned, something unexpected happened. From the shadows near the exit ramp, a third person appeared. A man in a dark coat, walking with the confidence of someone who knew exactly why he was there. He approached them without hesitation. Amelia flinched. Ethan stiffened. The man didn't shout. He didn't threaten. He simply said something short, quiet, and sharp enough that Amelia instinctively stepped back. Ethan tried to assert himself, to look in control, but the man ignored him. He extended his hand, palm open, demanding the folder. Amelia hesitated, just for a second, and that single second told me they were in far deeper trouble than I thought. Eventually she handed it over. The man gave her a curt nod, said something else too quiet for me to hear, then walked away as if he'd collected nothing more than a dry-cleaning ticket. Ethan and Amelia stood frozen. Neither moved, neither spoke. Then Ethan slammed his fist against a pillar, muttered something furious, and stormed off toward his car. Amelia leaned against the wall, rubbing her forehead with shaking hands. I'd never seen her like that, even when she lied to my face. She looked terrified. That's when I realized something crucial. Their betrayal wasn't just immoral. It was dangerous, and they were no longer in control of it. As Amelia drove away, I sat in my car staring at the space where the stranger had been. Who was he? What did he want? And how deeply was this rooted inside their company? My original plan, exposing their affair, dismantling their careers, suddenly seemed too small. There was a larger story unfolding, one that could destroy more than two unfaithful people. And as strange as it sounds, I wasn't sure whether I wanted to stop it. The night after the parking garage exchange, I couldn't focus on anything except the stranger's face, or rather, the way he carried himself. People who move like that don't fear consequences. They enforce them. When he stepped out of the shadows, Amelia and Ethan reacted like they recognized him, or at least recognized what he represented. That meant this wasn't just an affair or a side deal for extra money. Something bigger was in motion, and the two of them were only small pieces in a machine that could crush them if they slipped. I didn't sleep. Instead, I sifted through everything I'd gathered: messages, documents, meeting logs, hidden folders, encrypted PDFs. By 4 a.m., patterns began to form. By 6 a.m., I had a theory. And by 7 a.m., I knew exactly what I needed to do next. Not confront Amelia. Not expose them at work. Not yet. I needed access to Ethan's internal files, the ones he was hiding outside the company system. I spent the morning digging into his digital footprint. As a strategy director, he should have been cautious. But arrogance is the twin of power. People like him believe no one is watching. That belief leads to cracks. And I found one, a login portal to a private server that wasn't company registered. It required a PIN, a password, and device verification. The first two were breakable. The third wasn't, unless I had temporary access to Ethan's device. So I built a plan around it. Ethan visited the same gym every Thursday evening. He always arrived with his laptop bag, always left it in his locker, always spent exactly 70 minutes on a predictable routine. I confirmed all of this by reviewing his social posts, location check-ins, and gym habits he carelessly shared. When the time came, I went early. I followed him discreetly, changed in the locker room a few rows down, and waited. When he began his workout, I walked over casually, opened his locker with the bypass tool I'd practiced with 4 days, and lifted his laptop. I didn't take it. That would have set off alarms. I only needed 90 seconds. I connected a tiny USB device, a cloned access key I'd prepared, and let it extract the authentication certificate his server required. 64 seconds later, I returned the laptop exactly as it had been. He never even knew. By the time he stepped out of the shower, I was already blocks away, certificate in hand, ready to dive into the files he thought no one would ever see. Back home, I authenticated the server. It opened without resistance, as if it had been waiting for someone bold enough to try. The directory tree loaded slowly, revealing folder after folder, each more confusingly titled than the last. Model A12, vendor set 4, revision logs, cycle notes, and one simply labeled R. I opened R. Inside was a set of emails between Ethan, Amelia, and two names I didn't recognize, Gallagher and Price, high-level executives. Their signatures matched documents Amelia kept in her deleted folder, the folder she thought she'd erased. Their messages discussed projections, budget reallocations, investor presentations, all normal for corporate planning, but hidden among them were lines that made my stomach tighten. Allocate losses to sub-project B, delay disclosure, reframe the narrative as a strategic shift, no leaks, no deviations. And then one email from Gallagher: if the analyst catches discrepancies again, remove him from the cycle. You know what that means. I read that sentence 10 times. Remove him from the cycle. It didn't sound like firing. It sounded like erasing, silencing, and suddenly the stranger in the garage made sense. He wasn't a supervisor. He wasn't a partner. He was the enforcer. Amelia wasn't just cheating. She was participating in something she didn't fully understand, something she was afraid of. I kept scrolling. A folder labeled deliverables, external, contained more of the same financial manipulation. Losses hidden inside new budgets, inflated reports for investors, projections disconnected from reality. A classic corporate fraud pattern, but on a level that meant someone would eventually be forced to take the fall, someone low enough to be dispensable, someone like Amelia, someone who could be easily blamed for being misguided, negligent, or complicit. Maybe she knew, maybe she didn't, but Ethan knew. He was orchestrating more than she realized, using her access to PR narratives as a shield. If things went wrong, she'd be the perfect scapegoat, and he'd walk away untouched. That's when I felt the anger finally stir, not because she cheated, not because she lied, but because she had no idea she was being used, manipulated, pulled into something that could destroy her life far beyond betrayal. And for reasons I still can't fully explain. I didn't want her to end up crushed beneath Ethan's ambitions. I wanted him to fall, properly, publicly, irreversibly. I continued digging through the folders, and then I found it, a document named Statement Draft, Amelia Ward, a confession, a full written admission of wrongdoing, prepared by Ethan, waiting for her signature. He planned to pin everything on her. I sat back, breathing slowly, feeling the weight of that realization settle into something cold, and deliberate inside me. The betrayal was no longer personal. It was structural. And if I played this right, I could take down all of them, not with violence, not with threats, but with the truth they were trying to bury. But before I moved forward, I needed one more thing: proof of the stranger's identity. Because without that, the story wasn't complete, the trap wasn't set, and justice, real justice, wasn't possible. That night, I created a plan far more dangerous than anything I'd attempted so far. And if it worked, none of them would walk away unscathed. I didn't know the stranger's name, but I knew the type of man he was. He wasn't a consultant, he wasn't a partner, he wasn't anyone who'd ever appear on a payroll sheet or an internal directory. He was the kind of man corporations keep off the books, the kind they call when a problem needs to be corrected quietly, when documents need to disappear, when people need to be reminded what happens if they don't obey. If I wanted to take down Ethan, Gallagher, Price, and everyone tied to their scheme, I needed to know exactly who that man worked for and how far he'd go. So I started with the one person who'd seen him up close, Amelia. Not talking to her, that would have raised alarms. I needed to observe her without alerting her, without tipping off Ethan, and especially without drawing attention from the stranger. On Friday evening, she left home for what she claimed was a team dinner. Nothing about her tone was unusual. Had I not known the truth, I might have believed her. She drove across the city to a restaurant where executives often met. I kept a few cars behind her and watched quietly from outside. She wasn't meeting Ethan, she wasn't meeting friends, she was meeting Gallagher. I recognized him from corporate photos: a senior executive, clean suit, expensive watch, posture of a man who believed the universe existed to accommodate him. Amelia sat across from him, tense, hands wrapped around her glass like she was afraid it might slip. At first, they spoke like colleagues, professional, rehearsed, but then the discussion shifted. Gallagher leaned forward, lowering his voice. Amelia didn't interrupt, she barely breathed. Her eyes stayed fixed on him as if missing a single word would cost her something more than her job. I didn't have audio, but body language tells its own story. She asked a question, a desperate one, judging from the way her voice cracked just enough for Gallagher to shake his head with a slow, definitive no. She looked down, shoulders falling. Then she tried again, pleading. He repeated the gesture, another no. He wasn't negotiating, he was instructing. After a few minutes, Gallagher produced a document folder thicker than the one she'd handed Ethan and slid it across the table. Amelia opened it slowly. Her expression froze. Shock first, then disbelief, then resignation. She tried to argue, but Gallagher cut her off with a single raised hand. Whatever her role was before this moment, it was now something else, something forced, something final. Then Gallagher said something that made her go pale. Not angry, not embarrassed, pale. She nodded quickly, too quickly, as if agreeing might spare her from hearing more. Gallagher placed his hand briefly on her shoulder, a gesture that looked comforting from afar but felt like ownership. This wasn't a conversation. It was an order disguised as guidance. 20 minutes later, the meeting ended. Gallagher left without looking back. Amelia stayed seated for several minutes before finally standing, unsteady, shaken. She wasn't a conspirator. She was a liability being reshaped into a scapegoat. The more I watched, the more the narrative inverted in my head. For weeks I'd seen her as the architect of my betrayal. Now I saw the truth. She was trapped. Yes, she chose to cheat. Yes, she lied. But she was nowhere near the monster I had imagined. Ethan was. And Gallagher, and likely Price, and whoever the stranger answered to. I followed her home, keeping enough distance that she wouldn't notice. She didn't cry in the car. She didn't call anyone. She simply stared ahead as if rehearsing a story she'd been ordered to tell. When she stepped inside our apartment, she froze for a moment near the door, the breath catching in her chest before she forced herself to move as if nothing had changed. But something had. She carried a fear she couldn't hide. And whatever was in that folder from Gallagher, it was the final step in turning her into the fall person. Once she went to sleep, I opened her laptop again, using the remote access I'd installed weeks back. New files appeared, Gallagher's folder scanned and uploaded. A prepared press statement, a financial error report with her name at the top, and a resignation letter with a date left blank. My jaw tightened. They were building a narrative, a clean one, a convenient one. The scandal would break. The company would save face. Executives would claim ignorance. Ethan would testify against her. And the stranger would ensure she didn't deviate from the plan. My revenge had originally been personal. Now it had purpose. I would take them down, all of them, using their own documents, their own emails, their own signatures. But before I could make my move, something unexpected happened. At 3:14 a.m. I heard Amelia get out of bed, footsteps soft, hesitant. She walked into the living room. Then the faint metallic click of the balcony door unlocking. I followed silently, standing just beyond the hallway as she stepped onto the balcony and gripped the railing with white knuckles. Her breathing was shaky. Too shaky. Her head lowered, as if the weight of everything finally crushed her. She whispered something I barely heard. I didn't want this. She wasn't talking about the affair. She was talking about the trap tightening around her. For the first time since discovering the betrayal, I felt something strange, not pity, not sympathy, but a cold clarity. She was broken. Ethan wasn't. Gallagher wasn't. The stranger definitely wasn't. The people who crafted this scheme deserved destruction. Amelia deserved a chance to escape it, but to save her and still destroy them, I needed one final piece of the puzzle: the stranger's name, origin, and role. And there was only one person reckless enough to know that information: Ethan. Tomorrow night, I would pay him a visit, not with violence, not with confrontation, with something far more dangerous. The truth he didn't know I had. Ethan lived in one of those modern apartments built for people who wanted to feel important. Glass balcony, key code elevator, lobby security that pretended to care. I knew his schedule. He spent every Thursday evening at the gym across the street, then came home exhausted and alone. Perfect. I reached his building at 9:46 p.m. and walked in behind a resident who didn't bother checking whether I belonged there. I took the elevator to the 11th floor, walked down the hallway, and stopped outside his door. I didn't knock. I waited. At 10:03 p.m., footsteps approached from the stairwell. Ethan rounded the corner, scrolling through his phone, unaware of anything beyond the screen. The moment he looked up and saw me, he froze. His expression didn't show guilt, it showed fear. Good, relax, I said quietly. I'm not here to make a scene. He swallowed hard. What do you want? To talk. He hesitated, then unlocked the door. I stepped inside first. Everything was clean and arranged like he thought minimalism made him sophisticated. It just made him predictable. 5 minutes, he muttered. Then you leave. That depends on how honest you are. He hated hearing that, but he didn't argue. I sat on the couch. He stayed standing, arms crossed defensively like he expected me to swing at him. Your boss? I began. Gallagher. And the guy in the gray coat. Who is he? Ethan's eyes twitched. He wasn't expecting me to know about the stranger. That was good. It meant Amelia hadn't mentioned it. She was still guarding parts of the truth. I don't know who that man is, he said. I leaned back, calm. Lie again. And I walked straight into the compliance office tomorrow morning. I'll hand them a package with emails, phone logs, meeting recordings, metadata from your transfers, and screenshots of your private messages with Amelia. You won't just lose your job. You'll take the fall for the entire scheme. His arms dropped. The color drained from his face. Where did you get all that? He whispered. Answer the question. He exhaled, defeated. His name is Cade. Nobody knows if that's his real name. He works, off contract, for Gallagher, for whoever pays him. Gallagher, Price, sometimes other departments. He cleans things up, Problems. People who don't cooperate. He rubbed the back of his neck anxiously. I didn't want to get involved with him. But Gallagher said if I wanted the promotion, I had to handle the internal side of the transfer scheme. And, look, I didn't know it would go this far. You knew enough. He didn't deny it. You used Amelia. I said. His head lowered. She was already involved before me. She thought helping Gallagher would guarantee her job. She didn't know what he was planning to pin on her. She does now. Ethan shut his eyes, guilt flickering across his face like he wished it could count as redemption. It didn't. Then help me undo this, I said. You give me everything I need: off logs, internal memos, chain of command approvals, hidden accounts. I'll expose Gallagher, Price, and whoever else is involved. Amelia walks free. And you? Well, you might get out with your name scratched instead of burned. Ethan looked at me with a mix of disbelief and desperation. You do that? After what I— Don't finish that sentence. He nodded quickly, as if afraid speaking the betrayal aloud would detonate something. I can get the files, he said. But if Gallagher finds out, he won't, I cut in. Because I'm not sending anything yet. I'm building a full dossier. When it drops, it hits legal, the press, and the internal board at the exact same second. No time for cover-ups. He hesitated. What about Cade? That's the part you're going to help with tonight. Ethan stared at me. Then I pulled out my phone and showed him a live map, a tracker I'd installed days ago on Amelia's work bag. One of Gallagher's documents instructed her to meet someone the next morning at 7:20 a.m. in a parking garage. The file didn't say who, but I already knew. Cade. He's going to pressure her into signing the resignation, I said. Maybe more. Ethan's lips parted in shock. No, they wouldn't. They would. He knew I was right. I want you there tomorrow. With me. We intercept them. Not physically. We control the narrative. Cameras, timestamps, recordings. If Cade steps even 1 inch outside protocol, the company burns. Ethan shivered. You're not scared of him. I was, but I couldn't let that matter. I'm scared of what happens if we don't stop this. He nodded slowly. Okay, he whispered. I'll help. The deal was made. The trap was set. Tomorrow morning, Amelia would walk into what Gallagher hoped would be her surrender. Instead, it would be the first crack in their empire, and I would be standing in the shadows, ready to break it wide open.